Greetings, YouTube. There have been a lot of cartoons of the Saturday morning variety that have inspired people to game, both indirectly, just because they kind of like the genre and it kind of got them into it, or directly, in the case of like Thunder the Barbarian. There are games out there designed specifically to emulate that, or He-Man. There are games designed very specifically to emulate that style of campy fantasy. Lots of cartoons have inspired that. But there have been very few cartoons out there that were specifically based on an actual tabletop role-playing game, and I can only think of one, and that's the D&D Cartoon. And I own that. I haven't looked at it in ages, but I do own the entire series. And the fact that the box set I bought with it even came with a little pamphlet that described them with it, the characters with D&D stats and everything. It's kind of cool. And I recently found a little video that's like 12 or 13 minutes long that talks about the history of D&D, the D&D cartoon, and how it got made. So I definitely thought it would be something that we here on my channel, on the RPG section at least, would very much like to go take a look at. Because even if it is just purely entertainment for you, you may find it interesting, particularly if you are of the generation that was around when that was originally released. And I can't remember when the guy said this was released. I believe I was older than the demographic it was aimed at, but I was a fan of, I used to watch the Rugrats cartoons when they were coming out new, even though I was far older than the demographic, because they're just great cartoons. They were funny, they were well done. I really found them entertaining. My wife and I still watch cartoons, just like classic cartoons. I recently watched some of the classic black and white cartoons that were done like in the 1930s. That were quite fascinating to watch. Very problematic, but fascinating to watch. So I love the whole animated history of the animation and the things that it can do, particularly in the short form. I find that fascinating. I like the long form too. I watched Batman Soul of the Dragon this past weekend, which is a wonderful send-up of the 70s of Bond movies and Bruce Lee type films and satanic cult ideas all kind of mashed together with a sprinkling of Batman on top. So yes, it was quite entertaining. My wife was just like, she was like, when you realize it was a complete send-up of those genres, she laughed. She's like, I said, didn't I mention this? She said, no, you did not mention this. She thought it was okay. I thought it was quite delightful. So I thought people here on the channel would be interested in knowing a little bit more about the history of the cartoon. I can remember when I saw it originally, I thought it was very corny, very campy, because it was very simplified, which it kind of had to be, because let's face it, even the most earliest renditions of the game, even though the OSR versions of the game were complex in comparison to the backstories of most cartoons being presented to kids. Of course, eventually over time, those backstories can get quite complex. But even the simplest, earliest games did have a lot of crunch in them for your average person. Your average person was not used to that level of rules. Remember that our tabletop role-playing games came out of the wargaming world. So those folks were already used to being they were willing to bog right down into those rules. So the fact that they were being asked to take on a whole new set that was just individual characters opposed to units and armies wasn't much of a stretch for them. They have already used to complexity. They just went to a different kind of complexity. Your average person is kind of daunted when they come at a tabletop role-playing game, because the rules are complex. Even the games that have for my example, one of my favorite games of all time, the 1992 edition of Gamma World, there's 190 pages to this book, and even if you take out the things that aren't rules, that's still probably 170 some plus pages of rules. Now some of it is repetitious, monster stats and things like that, but it's still a lot of material to ask your average person to get into right off the bat. It's why it's a hobby that we really need to have a group pull new people into individually. Expecting someone to take on the hobby from scratch is difficult. That's why the box sets you see in nowadays, and even in the earlier days, they were very simple, because again, the full-blown game was very complex. Sorry, I'm going to go off there. But I thought it was campy and corny, but I still found it entertaining, and I watched all of the I think I watched all of the episodes when they originally aired. It could be possible that I missed some of them because I also had more complex adult things in my life going on, so I wasn't necessarily following every single detail on the Saturday morning cartoons. Back when there were Saturday morning cartoons, there really aren't Saturday morning cartoons. There is a Cartoon Network, so that's kind of cool, and there are other networks that carry a lot of animated things like Nickelodeon. Do they still carry a lot of animated things? I don't know. I haven't watched it. We only recently got a television, an LP that lets us have access to some things far more easily than we would have in the past. And like we got Disney Plus recently because my wife had wanted to see Soul, then we realized there was enough content on it for us to justify to keep it. The Mandalorian, of course, the Marvel series, which I'm enjoying, but also the Muppets and things like that. So you can't access any other way legally because you can't get to the season 4 and 5 of the Muppets except through bootlegs. You can only get them on streaming. First 3 seasons you can buy on disc. We own them. But so I've only recently gotten into watching anything even vaguely close to television anymore. And that's, again, on my schedule, not on appointment television like it used to be. So I have no idea what is out there for kids content, to tell you the truth, because I don't have any kids. And I own Fraggle Rock on disc. If I want to watch Fraggle Rock, I got Fraggle Rock right there. And I found Fraggle Rock cute and adorable and quite endearing. That's why I now own it. So let's talk about the D&D cartoon, what we remember about it. Did we see it when it first ran? If for all you out there, graybeards out there, maybe you did. And all the folks that may have never heard about it. So yeah, let's talk about the history of D&D cartoons and in general, how cartoons helped inspire us to do this hobby.